This is our panel discussion tonight on race and incarceration, featuring Sandra Joy, my sister, who is an expert in the field of conversation we're having here tonight. She was a social worker, professor, sociology professor in Rowan University of Glassboro, New Jersey, and she's got special guests with us. I'll let her make an introduction to who those guys are. We're so happy to see you all tonight. Thank you for joining us to share your stories. And if anyone listening has questions, type them in the chat box. We'll go back and try to answer questions after talking amongst the panel tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's such an honor to be a part of this program, not just tonight, but part of the series that you've been doing around race and literature and conversations about race. I know that I've been to a few of them already, and they're all really great. So I really appreciate Ashe County Public Library for hosting this event and for the whole series of events around race. So it's my honor to help to moderate the panel tonight. I bring three people who I've come to know and love over the years. And each one of them have quite a story to share with you that will inspire you and move you tremendously when you hear what they've been through. The fact that we're talking about race is significant to the variable of incarceration, or the whole mass incarceration we've been dealing with as a society. It's no coincidence that all three of our guests are African American, because the death penalty that all three of them have survived in 3 different states is racially unequal in terms of there's racial disparities, as we know, at all levels of sentencing and all levels of incarceration, but even more so, increasingly more so with the death penalty. So we have 3 guests to talk about their story a little bit. They'll each go about 15 minutes or so, 15 to 20 minutes. And then at the end, we'll reserve some time for Q&A for anybody who wants to ask a question of the whole panel or of them individually. But let me just tell you a brief introduction of each of them and how I came to know them. So I've been engaged in the abolition movement against the death penalty for a long time now, over 2 decades. And in the early 2000s, I began a research project looking at the experience of being a loved one of somebody on death row. And it was at that time that I came to know one of our guests on the panel tonight's family and him. His name is Jermaine Wright. He goes by Marlow. Marlow was on death row in Delaware for approximately 25 years before he was finally freed 4 years ago as an innocent man. And when I met him, it was early 2000s, maybe 2003 or 4, and I met his family, his 2 children, and got close to the family with some research that I was engaging in, but also as an activist in the state of Delaware, along with all of the other men on Delaware's death row. And his story is riveting. The things that he's been through are definitely related to race and racism within our criminal injustice system, as I refer to it. And he was held in the Department of Corruptions, I refer to that as well, for all of that time. So that's Marlow, and he has quite a story. I don't want to take away from that. And then after Marlow, I had an opportunity to meet Ronald Kitchen, who is in the city of Philadelphia now, but he was on death row in Illinois. And Ronnie, I don't know if you remember this necessarily, because it was a very emotional time when you and Marvin first came home. Quite literally within days, or you came to the Campaign of the Death Penalty Conference, and I was there in Chicago and got to see him when he was first released. So I became acquainted with Ronnie after he came home. I want to say 2009, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been at least 10 years. And last but not least, I'm so happy, and before I move on, Ronnie definitely has a story to share with you, not only about racism and his experience on death row in Illinois, but also corruption in the police department as one of John Burge's torture victims. And if you're not familiar with that story, it's incredibly disturbing. And he writes about it in his book, which we will be sharing with you on the screen, called My Midnight Years. And it's an excellent book. So I really hope that you all get a chance to check that book out. Our third guest, Kwame Ajamu, I got to meet, and his lovely wife, LaShawn, who's there with him. I want to say 2015. It was right after he was released from prison. So I think that's actually been about 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. So I met him in 2014. 2014, after Kwame had already been home. He did 28 years, which is bad enough, horrific to imagine doing 28 years from the age of 17. He had been home for approximately 12 years. I'll let him share it. And then 6 years ago, his brother and his other co-defendant, a dear friend of his, who were part of the three of them who were incarcerated for a crime that all three of them did not commit. So they were also released after nearly 40 years, the other two co-defendants. So they have quite a story, and this is in the state of Ohio, in Cleveland. So wrongful convictions, all three of them combined, they've done over 60 years, easily, maybe 70 years between three people. And it's amazing to me that they've survived with such a genuine spirit, kind and loving spirit for people that they encounter, with such a drive and passion to abolish the death penalty for everyone. Nobody would have blamed them if they had walked out of those prison walls and gone home and said, I'm done, I'm out of the public eye, I'm tired of all this. But all three of them have dedicated their lives to this movement to abolish the death penalty. And their stories are compelling. And I don't want to take much more of our time because you'd rather hear from them, I'm sure. But we're going to start off with Ronald Kitchen, who I mentioned, who is living in Philadelphia now, but started off his experience at age 22 when he was wrongfully incarcerated for a crime he didn't commit in the state of Illinois in Chicago. And Ronnie, if you could please share a little bit of your story with us, and in the process, if there's anything you want to share with regard to the racism that was abundantly present among John Burgess and his police precinct and the city of Chicago and state of Illinois, please feel free to share whatever you would like, because we're excited to hear from you. So thank you, Ronnie.
Hello, everybody. As you know, Sandra just said, my name is Ronald Kitchen. I am a member of the Death Row 10, who we started an organization while we was on death row. It was probably 13, 14 guys that actually had the torture issue with the John Burge, under John Burge era. I also wrote a book about the incident, about the situation, my midnight years, and I co-wrote a book, Tortured by Blue, with Stanley Howard, which is one of the guys from the Death Row 10 who actually started. Him and I are like what you can call co-captains in the organization, in that group. My nightmare started 1988, August the 25th of 1988, when I was picked up for auto theft. And when the police pulled me over, I was actually coming from a game room that me and my mom had, which was, I come from there and go to the store, and I was pulled over, and the officer told me that somebody just pointed me out, was still in the car. I never stole a car a day in my life. Besides, I had access to many cars. So I had told my mother and my grandmother, my aunt, and my son's mom at the time that I'll be right back. They said I stole the car. So, I never stole the car. Nobody never pointed me out to stealing their car. So when I went to the police station, one thing led from another. I get down there. It's not about a car. It's about 5 murders whom they said I had involvement in the murders, which they said I had the people killed for $125. Now, to bring it to a full circle, the informant that used against me was a person, his name was Willie Williams, which was in jail doing 4 years, 5, 6 years, something like that. Said he knew me, said he called my house. Prior to this, they had me on surveillance for 30 days. Prior to this, that he called my house, and I confessed to him over the phone that I had my co-defendant to go in there and kill these guys. Willie Williams said he worked for me. He was my driver. I was paying him $2,000 a week to drive me around. But he was in jail for breaking people's house and robbery. So I'll leave that there. So I get down to the police station. They come in. At the time, it was Michael Kill and the officer Byron that actually arrested me. So that I get there, they handcuff me to a hoop on the wall, and they asked me, "Who do I talk to?" I told them I talk to a lot of people. So they asked me, "Do you remember saying this?" But they never said the boy's name. They just read a statement about what he had said. So once again, I told them I talk to a lot of people. So they leave out. Michael Kill come back and his heavy set off cop. You know, he didn't have no name on his white shirt, but he was a white shirt. He didn't have no lieutenant bars and no sergeant stripes and none of that. He come in with all that taken off. They come in, commit stuff, doing what they do, beat me, punching me, kicking me, stumping me. So as they saying this, they are asking me, "Who do I talk to?" You know, like I said, I talk to a lot of people. Then they say, "Do you remember saying this?" I told them, I ain't never told anybody I had anything to do with the murder. So that led off to like 18 hours of me being tortured by Michael Kill, John Burge. I am one of the cases that John Burge actually was involved in. In all other cases, he was just the overseer, but he actually put his hands on me. And like I say, this led up to like 17 hours of being tortured. So I finally gave in like 17 hours later. So this assistant state's attorney came in. Mark Lukovich came in. He asked me, he read my rights. When he read my rights, I told him I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to my lawyer. The same thing I told Kill, Byron, Smith way before then. I want to call my lawyer. I had a lawyer because I had another case going on. So he like, okay. So he leave out. He tell them, "We don't want to talk to me." So when he come in, Michael Kill come in. He commenced of beating my brains in. When he leave out, the state's attorney who come again. I tell him, "I don't want to talk to you." Smith comes in. He said he's gonna introduce me to the blackjack in the telephone book. There's a lot of things that the word nigger was being thrown around like it was a Snickers, a candy bar, or a pack of cookies. Everybody was sharing this word nigger when it come down to these police officers. So when he comes in, I tell him I don't want to talk to you. I want to call my lawyer. He leaves out. Another cop comes in. So in my eye, and what I told the judge too, years later, and at the time when I went to trial, that I figured if I give them what they wanted, as far as me lying on myself, putting another innocent man in jail, that somebody's gonna believe me that these cops had to beat me to make me do this. So when I get there, I had a no good attorney. His name was Robert Edwards. He did no investigation, didn't try to do no investigation. My co-defendant had an attorney named Duke McNeil. When we was going to trial at the time, he was on an Oprah Winfrey show instead of being in the courtroom. So, and the judge that we had, Benson Venavinga, was a straight state judge. He didn't care about anything, everything that the state put in front of this man, he went along with it. So it took them until like what, 2002. Now 2000, when we got this judge called Stuart Palmer, after Governor Ryan had commuted everybody's sentence from off death row to natural life, then I got in Stuart Palmer's courtroom, and for some reason Stuart Palmer became this judge that I should have had 13, 14, 15 years ago, because he didn't let them come in and say that they had tapes of me confessing to a crime that they never played, that they had witnessed to a crime that they never produced. And by him doing his job is what set the ball rolling for Marvin and myself to be freed. And I guess a whole host of other people, guys that followed after us, that came free from out of Chicago, Illinois. And the ball is still rolling, and it's still rolling. So when I came home, you can't just lay back and not keep the fight going. And I've probably been out of the Zoom for a minute, because the work that I do keeps me occupied, keeps me gone. But I'm still here trying to fight for those brothers who have been left behind, like the Stanley Howards. You know, this guy should have been out, and he's still fighting for his freedom. And those are the guys I'm still fighting for. Hopefully that he'll be out in another 2 or 3 months. And so, and I met Sandy in 2009. It's been 11 years now. I've been home 11 years, and the fight is still strong. You know, we talk about racism. Racism is still here. We look at it now. Look at we were just talking about this election. This election is about race and class. Look at it. You know, this is making me realize my vote did count, but at the same time, we have this evil prick who they call a president is still trying to steal it. And this is what we have not, you know, white people, y'all just getting a taste of this, but we've been going through this for years when it come down to race and class. We have been at the totem pole. You know, I need some white privilege, for real. I do. I need some white privilege. I need to get out there and show my ass so they can sit up there and say, oh, he must got a white sister, a white mama, something like that. Because white privilege is at its masses right now. If it wasn't for the masses, when I was downtown, when Joe Biden ran, it was more whites down there than it was blacks celebrating. And when my mother was with the campaign to end the death penalty, it was more whites out there fighting for my freedom than it was people of my own skin tone. So, you know, because I think it comes down to black folks are being scared, are being bullied, are being tortured and terrorized by the police. But like I said, this has been going on in our neighborhoods for forever, since I can remember. When my uncle's name was going to Tilden High School, they had to fight the Gaylords, the white Gaylord gangs, just to go to school. Not just the gangs, but they had to fight the police and the fire departments, because we was like one of the first black folks to move around in that neighborhood. So we had to fight, and we still fighting. We fighting for the same things they was fighting for back in the 50s and 60s. Right now, it's just a new face to it, and it's Trump, and his name is Trump. He's trying to take everything that people fought for us to have, to live in the nice houses, to stay in the beautiful neighborhoods, to drive the good cars, to have our kids going to these expensive schools. He's trying to set us back 100 years. And if we, as a people, let that happen, they're gonna be able to put slavery back on the books. Before you know it, it's gonna be chain gangs of black folks with living in these pretty neighborhoods, being what they call when the government want to come and just take your house, eminent domain. And we're not gonna be able to be here no more, because it's gonna be like the eminent domain. They're gonna be able to walk in and take everything that we don't work so hard to get and take it for us without any problem. I'm gonna get somebody else time now.
That was great, Ronnie. Thank you so much. And I know there's a whole lot more to your story, so I want to encourage people that we don't have time to go into tonight. I definitely want to encourage people, and Suzanne will be bringing up online as well, and we'll talk about it before it's out, to get a copy of your book, My Midnight Years, that goes into the story that you're sharing a little bit. So yeah, thank you, Suzanne, for putting that up there. So in case, and just so people know, John Burge oversaw and directly, in Ronnie's case, participated in the torturing of over 200 young men, if I'm not mistaken. It was over 200. Many of them have come home, but people I know directly, like Ronnie, Marvin Reeves, also Mark Clements and others in Chicago, are tirelessly working to get the others out. And they've been exclusively, almost nearly all Black and brown young men and even teenagers. Mark Clements was 16 years old as one of the victims, for instance. So when he was finally arrested after many, many years of people sitting on death row and having life sentences and these long, lengthy sentences, John Burge was sentenced to 4.5 years for that, allowed to keep his pension. And then when he finished his time, he moved to Florida. I thought about you last year, though, when I'm sure you got the word, Ronnie, that he had passed, that he died. And but you and I both know, Ronnie, that with John Burge no longer in this world, that doesn't mean the problem is gone. When Trump leaves office, the problem is not gone. If anything has been made clear in this election, we are a very divided nation right now. And the fact that so many people would vote for a candidate who was, by the accounts of many, supporting institutional racism by his rhetoric is problematic. So did you want to add anything before we move to Marlow?
We have to remember too, John Burge didn't go to jail for what he did. He went to jail for perjury. He did 4 years for perjury. And then with good time, if he was a moderate inmate, he got out free with the pension. The city of Chicago paid over $10 million to represent him and the rest of his cronies.
Excellent and important correction. So thank you for adding that. I appreciate that. And in his state, Illinois, Governor Ryan, in 2003, I want to say, commuted everybody who was on death row at that time, over 160 people in Illinois, to life sentences, because during his tenure as governor, there were 13 people exonerated. 13 people exonerated when 11 people were executed. And he said that's a problem, that more people were exonerated than executed in the same time period. People who have since left us, like we know Darby Tillis and Perry Cobb and other people that Ronnie knows all too well. It's obviously not a club that he ever wanted to belong to, but there's definitely some camaraderie that exonerees and survivors of death row share. So thank you so much, Ryan. We'll give you some time during the Q&A if there's anything else you wanted to add or if people have questions for you specifically. But next I wanted to turn our attention so we can get all three of our guests to share before we come back and have them share some more at the end, to Jermaine Wright, who we call fondly Marlow, from the state of Delaware. And as I mentioned at the top of the hour, I came to know Marlow back in 2003 or 4, definitely by 2004. So it's been about 16 years ago that we first met. And when he was on death row and I would go and visit him and bring his son or go with his mom and get time with him from behind the walls, his spirit was always a fighter spirit and never giving up. He never gave up. He knew the whole time, I'm innocent. I will beat this. I don't care how long it takes, but I am not dying in this prison. I am going to come home and be with my family. And sure enough, he is home, and we celebrate every year around the anniversary of his release. He shows us how good of a bowler he is at his bowling party that we have every year. So yeah, he's an amazing person. He's very, very resilient, full of love and passion, and still working and staying in touch with many of the guys who he left behind, just like Ronnie has. So Marlow, let me be quiet and let you share, because you've got a lot of wonderful things to share as well about your story. And some of it is similar to Ronnie's story in terms of being tortured and coerced into a false confession. That part is very familiar. So I'll let you pick it up from there. Thank you, Marlow. Don't forget to unmute yourself, Marlow.
I'll start over. My name is, thank you everyone. How everybody doing? My name is Jermaine Wright. As Sandy said, everyone's called me Marlow. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. I grew up in the projects of Riverside, single mother, who took care of a family of 3, who taught us right from wrong, to go the right way, And as I got older, you been a teenager, I chose to do things opposite of what she taught me. So I went to the streets. Into the streets, there were drugs. I became a user of those drugs as well as dealing drugs, which I shouldn't have been doing. Well, at the age, I started at 14, 15. At the age of 17, I became more involved in using heroin with a few of my buddies, and that those things put my name out in the streets. So my life came about, the wrong turn came about in terms of being wrongfully convicted is a murder occurred at the Highway Inn, and a couple fiends from my neighborhood gave a note to the clerk at the Highway Inn and said, "Your man is Marlow and T." And Marlow came about as my real name. Well, Marlow is my real name, Jermaine Wright. So what the officers did, they got a search warrant for Jermaine Wright, not about a murder, but about a shooting assault that occurred across the highway from Riverside. So they ran into my house, arrested me, arrested one of my friends, and two of my friends, took me down to precinct. Before, while I was down the precinct, I was also intoxicated because I was using heroin that night. I was using heroin all day long. So they put me in the room, and then they put my friend Garnett in another room, and my another friend in another room. Remind you, I also had bags of heroin in my pocket, which they never found. So I began using also in the precinct before this interrogation started. So the interrogation started, they questioned me about shootings in the parks and about 3 shootings. Then they started questioning me about the Highway Inn, which from day one, I said I had no involvement whatsoever with the Highway Inn. So my interrogation went on like for 16 to 18 hours. I was handcuffed to a steel chair. I was, it was cold. I was getting back on the floor while they was interrogating me. They was asking me questions. I wrote things on a piece of paper to answer questions. Then I would eat the paper. Then the whole interrogation were lead on questions. Well, do you think this could have happened? And then I'd be like, nah. Well, do you think such and such could happen? Then I'd be like, oh, that might have could have been happening. This is all under the influence. So everything that I said to them was absolutely, completely wrong. In terms of the gun that was used, the victim was shot with the 22. As we found out in court, I said that the gun that they found in my house was the weapon that was used for the crime, which was a 38. In terms of the direction going north and south, everything was wrong. Yeah, he said I had a co-defendant, my co-defendant, which is Lorenzo Dixon, who did not commit the crime, but I stated that he was with me when in fact he had an airtight alibi that he was with a friend at the movies. And make a long story short, they scared him into taking the plea. Well, I went to trial. My family, unfortunate, they didn't have no money. I went to trial. They got a lawyer named Jack Willer. Jack Willer was my attorney. In Delaware, in order to handle a capital murder case, you have to have 5 years experience to even take a case. My attorney at the time, Jack Willer, did not have no experience. So I went to trial. Well, let's go back before I went to trial. As Ronnie stated, that he had a jailhouse snitch in his case. Well, along with the extracted confession, false confession that I had a jailhouse snitch who wrote the prosecution, the DA, and said, look, I have information on Marlow, and Marlow told me he shot the guy. When in fact, I never even talked to this guy. So basically, you got a false confession and a jailhouse snitch, and the guy that wrote the note and saying that Marlow and T is your guy. So when I went to trial, my attorney, Jack Willard, which being 18, 19, 20 years old going to trial, he put on a drug dealer defense, which from day one of trial put me in a bad spot, along with his inexperience of being a trial attorney. I went to court. The state had no piece of evidence against me, no eyewitnesses, no weapons, no nothing. Nobody placed me at the scene of the crime or whatsoever. So during this trial, the witnesses was put on. I was found guilty of capital murder. We filed appeals. Every year that we filed appeals since 1992 that I was found guilty and sentenced to die, I always said I was going home. I had a judge named Susan C. Del Pesco at the time who would not hear newly discovered evidence in my case as the years went on. So my appeals were denied. And then back then they take you up there to court, and once your case is denied, you go back up to the court and they re-sentence you to die. Mr. Wright, you're gonna die such and such at this time of the hour. See, they did that 3 times until they stopped because we had remaining appeals that was going on. So the trauma of this whole case is the cops in my case were some of the worst people that I've come to know. And when you know you got the wrong person and yet you constantly go to court and lie about the evidence that you got on me just to get a conviction, just to close this case, is totally wrong. You put an innocent man at the age of 18. I was the youngest on death row. I was the longest on death row. So as the years went on, my appeals were denied until my judge, Susan C. Del Pesco, retired. She retired, and I obtained lawyers from the shoe union in Philadelphia, pro bono. When she retired, I got a new judge. I got a new judge named Judge John Parkins, may he rest in peace. And I had new attorneys. The James Marinos, the Tracy Allstairs, the Claudia Benzet. Man, they presented my case in a way that my trial attorney or my post-conviction attorneys could ever do. When they first filed my appeal, you knew the fight was different than my trial attorneys that was in Wilmington, Delaware, because they had no experience whatsoever. My case was different than the other guys on my case, the Mike Manleys and these guys, but yet we had the same appeal, the same arguments were the same that was appealed to the courts. So basically all our appeals was denied based upon the fact that they had this just one group of attorneys who all relied on one attorney whose experience was better than theirs. And I can't make this up. All our appeals was the same, but we had different issues. So my two attorneys came on. They filed an appeal to Judge John Parkins. And Judge John Parkins stated that I do not believe in the outcome of Mr. Wright's trial, and granted me a new trial, and told the state of Delaware attorneys, they need to get a lawyer. So this was all doing, excuse me, let me back up. This was all doing my post-conviction, my fourth post-conviction relief, my fourth one. And they was presenting evidence and colorful claim, actual innocence evidence, and all that. And they before this, they put the cops on the stand. And I'm gonna tell you, the fight was a fight that had to be won. That you had to be there to see how policemen are not who they say they are. They ain't there to protect us. They there to destroy and kill by ways that they know how. It can be the gun, it can be the needle, it can be lying on a stand. This is what they do. After my attorneys finish interrogating this cop, Edward Mayfield, went to my attorney and asked my attorney, do I need to get a lawyer? This is what he asked my attorney. Because he was so bad and so wrong for what he did to me, he thought he needed an attorney for what he did. Lied on the stand. And the prosecution is no different. If you understand capital cases, in capital cases, 70% of capital cases, the state rely on a jailhouse snitch. This often occurs. So being all this, we went to court. I won new evidentiary hearing. The state had nothing else. Okay, Judge Parkins granted me a new trial. Matter of fact, he threw out the evidence. He threw out my false conviction, which the state appealed to the Delaware Supreme Court. They came on in 07. In 012, my case was overturned. So we going back and forth. The Delaware Supreme Court reversed his decision, right? And said, that claim was already it was already appealed. It was already adjudicated. So then he granted me another victory on the jailhouse snitch, which was granted me another trial. Granted me another new trial, and the Delaware Supreme Court reversed that. Mind you, in 2015, I was released from prison based upon Judge Parkins overturned my case. I stayed out 10 months. I was out 10 months. For the first time in a long time, I got a chance to hug my mother, my children, my family. I came out and got a job. I came out, I did everything right. And this was after 18 years of solitary confinement. I was released to my family. 10 months later, the Delaware Supreme Court reversed that decision and sent me back to prison in 2016. So now, me, my family, Sandy, and all us, we marching. We marched from my mother's house on 27th Street to my lawyer's office on Market Street. I had to turn myself in. Can you imagine what I was going through after being in solitary confinement, spending time with my family, being able to walk to the refrigerator and get what I want to get, being able to call people when I wanted to call, get up and walk out the door and sit on the step and feel the air without people looking over me. This is the joy that life given me, and they took it away. So I went back in 2016 after being out 10 months. And then the state, they threw out the confession, and then the Delaware Supreme Court, gave it back. So now the state can use the false confession again. So I was in there 10 months weighing the odds of going, the trial. My attorneys from Philly, they no longer could be on my case, so they got me attorneys out of New York. The best attorneys that you can get in the world. They got me top experts, everything. But it all boiled down to being home for that 10 months, got a taste of freedom to go on a trial. And the thoughts was with my attorneys, me, I wanted to fight because I knew I was innocent. But the thoughts was, what happened the first time could happen again. Now, to be with your sons and your families after since you left them when they was 1, to hug my mother and to be in my family and just live, I choose to accept the alpha plea, which happens often, for my freedom, knowing that I was an innocent man. You know, and I still had to deal with that today. You know, I still had to deal with the jailhouse snitch. I still had to deal with prosecutor misconduct. I still had to do with the cops, you know, lying and falsifying evidence. But the kicker is, when we went to go get the evidence, well, they didn't have no evidence, but when we went to get all the information that the state had in terms of my 61, and then they no longer had nothing in file that would supported me whatsoever. They claimed that they lost all the paperwork, all the evidence that they had in my case. They lost it. So, you know, I still deal with this, you know, till the day, and we know that the system is wrong, and that the system isn't for people of color, especially when the crime is dealing with a black guy and a white victim. You bound to get convicted quicker as opposed to black on black or white on black, because as Ronnie said, you know, white people, you know, they're privileged. You know, in terms, when it comes to the system is not for us. The system is against us. And I, you know, I experienced that firsthand. And once you experience that firsthand, you cannot go forward in life and think that justice is for everybody, equality is for everybody, when in fact it's not. So I was convicted, an innocent man, did 25 years incarcerated, 18 years in solitary confinement. Came out the first time, got a job, a car, doing good. Came out the second time and doing the same thing. Job, business. And I try not to allow my emotions of being wrongfully convicted to reflect upon everybody else in my life because somebody else did wrong to me. But then at times it's hard because you want those that did you wrong to feel the same pain that you felt. You know, there's no consequences for prosecutor killing people. There's no consequences for cops killing people. There's no consequences. It's I'm sorry. No, sorry, don't get it. You got to experience the same shit, excuse me, I experienced in our families of the wrongful incarcerated and incarcerated have to go through. You threaten you know, Mr. Wright, you're supposed to die on this day. Now, how you think my family felt? How you think I felt? I sat through 16 executions from the age of 18 to the age of 42. 16 executions. And that could have been me. I watched those guys. I watched the officers come on a tier. They videotape the guy from, they put them, you know, every day they come in and check their temperatures, their heart rate, to make sure they don't kill themselves because they want to kill them. This is my experience. They walking them off the tier and with videos, and then putting them in white clothes, giving them their last meal. And then the officers where I was incarcerated at, they smoke cigars when a guy died, when he's executed. They celebrate a man's death. This is my life. It's more to it, but this is my life on death row and outside of death row.
Thank you, Marlow. Wow. There'll be another opportunity for you to share more if you think of some things you weren't able to add or to answer to questions. I want to thank you and Ronnie, and we're about to turn to Kwame's story here in a moment, but all three of you for trying to summarize what took decades of an experience and I'm sure you have, and I don't know what's become of it all, if you threw it out or had a big bonfire, enough stacks and stacks of transcripts, each of you, to fill an entire room. So it's hard to succinctly summarize all of this in a period of time, but you did an amazing job, as did Ronnie, and I know Kwame is about to do it as well. And I'm really glad you mentioned what you witnessed from death row. Of the 16 guys, many of whom I knew as well, and you definitely did walk to their final days and to the end of their life with execution, because some people might say, well, you know, this racial bias you talk about, you're biased because it happened to you. No, 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 don't forget, Ronnie, Marlow, Kwame spent decades behind bars watching it happen to many other people. So their opinions about the racism that they've seen within the system doesn't just apply to them, and they know that. Ronnie knows many people who were also tortured by John Birch and his many officers in his precinct. Marlow knows many people. Kwame definitely knows many people in the state of Ohio. So, you know, this is not anecdotal, individual biased perception. This is decades of gathering information. And so it's thank you for sharing that. I always have a little bit of concern with the people I know who've gone through this, that it's re-traumatizing telling the story. I really genuinely hope, as you've told me before, Marlo, that it's more cleansing and it's more, and you know, helps you get off some of this, your chest, and have witnesses, people bearing witness to what you went through, so that you other people know what you're going through. And I just can't imagine. I watched on the outside with your family for many years before you came home, and I'll never forget when we had to walk you back to, as you mentioned, the march, to turn yourself back in. We were just, no, this is not happening. And I don't care what anybody may think about your decision to get out of there. I don't blame you. Nobody should blame you for that, because many people might know that soon after Marlow did sign that paperwork and walk out of that prison for the last time, there was an uprising in the prison in Smyrna where a guard was killed by some prisoners. And who knows, Marla, what they might have tried to pin on you or anybody else, as they did for many after that. So I'm really glad you got out of there. But I don't want to take any more time. Let me turn now to Kwame Ajamu, and a wonderful person who I'm excited for you to hear from as well. Kwame, as I mentioned, I met very soon within the year that he first came home. Actually, I keep saying that. He had been home for some years. He'll tell his story. After serving 28 years, and I met him after his brother and his co-defendant were finally released 6 years ago, who he had been fighting for after he came home. He went in, the youngest of all three of you, as only 17 years old, through the false testimony of a 12-year-old boy. I'll let him tell the story, but it's remarkable, and how it all came to him, and how close it may have been that at least his other two co-defendants who were incarcerated with him may not have made it home had this man not lived, 40 years beyond the age of 12 when the police coerced him into giving a false eyewitness testimony. But before as you wrap up your story, Kwame, please make sure you share with people your role with the Witness to Innocence. This is how I met Kwame, and this organization that Ronnie's been affiliated with as well, out of Philadelphia. And he sits as the chairman of the board of Witness to Innocence, and they do incredible work. They're working on many cases. And before we wrap up, which we have some time yet because it's only 6:20 or so, we have until 7. Before we wrap up, we can, mention some other cases that you can turn your attention to. Kwame can as well, that you can take some action, because this, unfortunately, tragedy of the injustices with people on death row and wrongfully convicted in all kinds of senses continues. So Kwame, let me turn it over to you, and please share with us a little about your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, guys. First and foremost, I want to say that, the business of death penalty abolition is something that is steadfast and embedded in my heart since 18. I was on a death row cell, cursed God, talked to the devil, wondered why my mother couldn't come get me because I was just a child, and all that trouble I hadn't did. And I became an abolitionist. I became hateful of those enemies that had accosted me and my brother and my good friend and had us in the situation. My journeys started in 1975. I was just 17 years old, and a white man, of course, 59 years old, United States money order salesman, entered my life to do business with the trade store there in our community on what would have been the last day of his life, for he lost both his liberty and his life. He was robbed, he was killed, and the proprietor's wife of the store was shot, struck in the neck from looking out the door, minding other folks' business, as they would say back in the day, right? So the interim of that is that a 12-year-old boy in our neighborhood who was a paper boy would say, hey, I know who did it. The cops took him in, and after so many hours of conferring with him, they allowed him to call his parents. He told his mother what was going on, but this kid was one who was always, making up stories and telling lies. Who's known for that. So his mother told him to straighten this out and come on away from down there, So he tried to do it, but the cops, and we would find this out later in his recantation testimony. They took him back into the room. He was just 12, and they got to screaming at him and slamming on the desk and cursing and all of those ambiguities that we know would terrify a 12-year-old boy. And but what got him was, in the end, they told him that, well, since you're so young and you committed perjury, perjury carries 5 years in prison. We can't put you in jail, but we're going to go and get your mother and lock her up. And so the big thing to that, the grand finale and all that, was that his mother was in the hospitals here. I'm trying to think of the name, which one it is. At the particular time, we called it Lakeside, but they call it something else now. But anyway, his mother was in the hospital, and she was suffering from ovarian cancer, to which she succumbed to. She later would die. And so, that having that understanding was very easy to see how this young boy was swayed to come out of that interrogation room and do he did. What is the really hardening part about all this and how I got involved, because at the time they just had a warrant. They did a warrant of arrest for my brother and my friend. But when they came, that pre-dawn raid that they normally do, 5:36 in the morning, to my house, and shook my foot, shook me woke. And I woke up and seen all the guns in my face, man. I was like, what the hell, But I didn't think about my safety or nothing like that. I thought about my mama, because my mother, all of my life had a weak heart, had been suffering from heart attacks, and this and that, and she took them pills, So I darted past them, just ran past them to my mother's room, and they chased me, they ran with me, And when I got to my mother's room, it was a lot of cops up in there too, And so I just went, I turned up, They was every kind of motherfucker you can think of, right? And I just kept cursing them, and why you in here, and you're gonna kill my mama, and this and that. You can imagine, I was just 17, my tongue was going, right? And so, but the cop looked at it was a white shirt on the scene, and he said, Sarge, he said, what do you want to do with this little bastard, And he said, take him down until we'll straighten it out later, right? So, but for me to take him down wasn't where my brother and my friend went, because I was 17. So they went to the county, I went to juvenile. It would take all the 12 days, the 10 working days. It was on the weekend when I went, going into the weekend, before they would write me into the story. And so they wrote me into the story as being a guy who was standing outside the store waiting on this man to come out of the store. And as I stood there drinking a soda pop, from the Dixie cup that I was holding and drinking it and waiting on him, when he came out, I threw it in his face, and it later became acid. It was acid once they had the autopsy on him. So, that in itself made me one hell of a guy to be drinking that. But that was the story. And so with that testimony and the fact that they were relentless at that time. And so right here, I want to take you back and bring in the racial part of how these things happened and still happen in the city of Cleveland, county of Cuyahoga. right? So in 1975, Cleveland, I'm just 17, but Cleveland was reunifying itself from having suffered two serious racial counts in both 1966, the Huff riots, and then again in 68, the Glenville riots, of which I was a part of, Lower East Side of Cleveland. I live right there, through all of it. And so I was able to see one part of St. Clair was what they called Collinwood area, and it was Bohunkies, and then down Sawinski going around Superior was the Pollock area, and so we were fenced in as it was, Murray Hill was the other way coming back towards Mayfield, and these were very, very violent Caucasian. They wasn't just white people. They was violent. If they caught you on that side of town, you had trouble, And so this was the cleansing of the areas and the neighborhoods and the communities going into the early 70s anyway. And the cops were just relentless at jumping out, beating you, shooting you, doing whatever the hell they wanted to do. Today, they use that scared for my life thing and this and that. But then in the 70s, they had, when they would shoot you, they had the Zippo lighter thing. I heard it click. I thought he had a gun. So I put 35 bullets in him, was afraid, So it's never changed. It's just kind of like ominous the way it evolves, it reeks, it's so foul the way this society has manifest right in our face, and it has nothing to do actually with the psychology of the matter. It has everything to do with what color you are and what line you're living on in these communities. This is where the disenfranchisements and the red lines come from, right? So just so you have a better understanding of what was happening in 1975, when them cops grabbed us and said that, well, these three niggas will do, so we would have a trial, and I believe it was Marlow that spoke about his corny ass lawyer, right? I think that was you. I'm not certain if it was or not, but so I dubbed my two lawyers Heckle and Jekyll, you dig, because they were always drunk. They didn't care nothing about the case, and I believe, I'm not going to be 100% sure, but I bet you if you read my transcript, you may see one really good objection in there by the defense counsel. Being young as I was, I didn't know nothing about the law, obviously, which is a part of the purpose as to being a member of Witness to Innocence and getting out and promulgating these things. You see, because our community has to know two things: that you should be educated about all facets of life. And guys, I just want to take you back to the reason why racism is so perpetuated by the political statutes in this country is because them motherfuckers know that the Constitution was written without any of us in mind. So let's be clear on that. That Constitution does not have a black man in mind in it, first and foremost. So you have to know that. So, and then those soldiers perpetuate these with the knowledge that they have. So this is one of the things that I would say that as a marching force in any movement, that a political movement and an environment that goes to smash shit and get it out the way, is the first thing that we should look at is that Constitution. Because just like they stole the 13th verse away from that anthem that they talk about all the time, if you go back and read that verse that's in that anthem, they'll tell you that. Francis Scott Key, that dude, they was talking about murdering us, man. If we went, hey, get real, just get real about this here. It's not just a matter as to why, it's a matter as to when everybody's gonna wake up and start pushing this shit the other way. You see, because it's always been in existence, because it never existed for us. You see, Thurgood Marshall even told you that, he said, I fight the good fight, but I know that I'm fighting all alone because there's no service on the other side. They're not for us. They're just not for us like that. On paper, it just doesn't exist. And so we have to change it. We have to change that. During the course of this trial, I would learn a lot of things about this society, the elements of law, and how it didn't apply to my little young butt, right? And so I would be tried, convicted, and sentenced to die all before my 18th birthday, which is October the 25th. And I went to court. I caught the case in May. So you think between May, June, July, August, September, 5 months, I had been tried and convicted and sentenced to die before I turned 18. This is why I'm so strong against capital punishment. It's because there's no room for pity on the people who serve capital punishment against the people who are always victims, who are always subjugated by this atrocity that we live. In the olden days, they used to tie who they thought was guilty up with ropes and string around them and throw them in the river. And if they was truly innocent, they believed they would float. Capital punishment. So I am against capital punishment because of the very reason it is so unfair. All the things that we talk about, I want to get to the psychological process of it. 3 days, the third day that I was on Ohio's death row at the age of 17, the guys that would play chess by number. I know how to play chess without a board and then by number and all that I learned, right? But Marlow and Ronnie, you know what I'm talking about. They would play by number and they would call out the number corresponding with the move that they would make. 3 days I had been on death row, and this guy says, move my bishop to your knight 47. And this man, this older gentleman who was in cell 47, okay, on death row, thought that they were coming to execute him. And I can still, as I'm telling the story here, that old man screaming, no, 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 please God, no. And he screamed like that for hours. This is my third day on death row for a crime I didn't do. And that old man screamed like that for hours until they came and took him off of death row. And again, Marlow, Brownie, you know. And they drugged him up. They loaded him up with Thorazine, Melodrine, or whatever it is they give him. And brought him back to his cell, and he was quiet and just whimpering, and he went on to sleep. And this is the part where I tell you about how capital punishment ignites mental health issues. This is the part where I tell you about PTSD, about how when human beings are separated from society, that their mind goes to start playing tricks on them. Because that's what was happening with that old man. He was suffering from PTSD and he was delusional. And he thought that by those young boys playing chess, and when they said that cell number, that exactly was what was happening. It was opening the cell and they were coming to execute. You see, putting a human being into isolation, sentencing someone to die and put them in a little room causes PTSD. The stronger or the weaker the person, the larger or the smaller the damages to the human brain. But it's one that is there and would last forever. A lot of you guys know that when I make my posts, and a lot of times I say support mental health issues. Reach out to those who have mental health issues, and always remember, mental health is not nothing to be ashamed of. It's something that's like a cold. Any human being can catch a mental health problem. So during my course of incarceration, I would spend 3 years on death row, thanks to a woman by the name of Sandra Joy, who was also on death row, who filed against capital punishment in the state of Ohio, it being unconstitutional, and she won. And so we were released from death row into general population where I would spend the next 25 years. In the course of that 25 years, all hell would break loose. 6 aunties passed away, my grandfather, 2 cousins, an uncle, a nephew. Hell, 60 days before I got out of prison, my oldest brother passed away. And I'm gonna show you what constitutes the irregularities of being disconnected with oneself, family, and feelings. When my brother passed away 60 days before I came out of prison, after all those years, I had the audacity to be upset with him. I had, you hear me? I had the audacity to be upset with that man for dying. I said, oh man, you couldn't wait 60 days. You see? So we have here a situation where an individual has got so detached from reality based on, you know, these struggles inside. Didn't even realize the man is dead, died. Couldn't do nothing about dying. You see? You have to retrain your mentality. You have been dehumanized all those years and not even realize it. So I would do 28 years in prison. 19 of those years I would serve as an institutional administrative clerk for the education department, where my service to over 5,000 to 6,000 men has helped them throughout their educational endeavors, from learning their simple ABCs, going from a 1.9 reading level to a few guys getting bachelor's degrees. All of the social, academics, and the cosmetic degrees that they could have gotten for going, like myself. The first thing I got was in the cooking school, culinary arts. We had built vocations and then just went from there. But in all of this, there was an innate desire to belong to the society of which I came from, of freedom, to get my brothers and my friend out from freedom. And so unlike you guys, I didn't get the opportunity for the judge to call me out of court and back, you know, out of the penitentiary and back. I actually went through the system and made a parole. It was the worst thing they could have done. Because when I made a parole, I began to fight for my freedom. I began to fight for my brothers. And guess what? Unlike Buddy Holly, I fought the law and I won this time. Because after 39 years, 11 years of me personally fighting from 2003 to 2014, they had to wait 11 years after I was paroled, which would make their physical incarceration 39 years. But after 39 years of incarceration and fighting hard for my freedom and my brother's freedom and my brother's freedom, the county of Cuyahoga County gave those boys and myself an exoneration, hands down. And so until the day that I can never breathe another air in this body, I'll never say these words again to you folks that are listening. Know that death penalty abolition, mass incarceration, the destruction of having sociologically and ideologically deterred people from going into their lives of freedom based on their race, based on their creed, based on their color of their skin. It's a new sheriff in town, and I'm gonna be trying to set all that shit down. Believe that. So I'm gonna get out the way now, and we're gonna wait for a while and see what you guys want to hear back. I'm sure my two brothers got a few things to say too.
Wow, thank you a million times, Kwame, Marlow, Ronnie, all three of you. Every story that you shared, every bit of your story that you shared, we can feel the anguish, the pain that you went through, what your family went through. And I can't thank you enough for bringing in the mental health aspect that's often not given the attention that it needs, because you and your families as well have been through such anguish mentally. It does take a toll on you, not only with the PTSD. Let's not forget you were very young men, and 17, 18, 22, and science has shown that the brain is still developing up until the age of 25. And so solitary confinement wreaks havoc on someone's mental health in terms of anxiety and depression. And we saw, if you're familiar with the case of Khalif Browder, I won't go into it now in the interest of time, you can see the devastation it has on a young brain to be in solitary confinement for so long. So thank you for bringing that up. I know you and all three of you have been doing tremendous work to get your stories out. And I know that you're going to be doing this with every ounce of your being until you can no longer do it any further. Working on the board of witness to innocence, there have been many cases. You are brethren to many, and at least two women that on the WTI exoneree list who have remarkable stories as well to share. So thank you for working with them, for helping to get your story out. I definitely want to make sure that I recognize I've seen at least one of the abolitionists who worked so hard on your case. Abe Bonowitz has joined us, and I'm sure there are some others that I'm not recognizing by name on there. So I'm sure that you want to give him, as you have, the thumbs up and shout out. He's been there for you for many years. And, you know, there's other death row exonerees in your state too that you've come to know both on the inside and now luckily on the outside with Derek Jameson and many others. So I want to turn this over to Q&A. Before we run out of time, we definitely want to mention a couple of cases. Purvis Payne, a man who just on federal death row, who just got to stay until April. But let's not sit down, let's not sit back. Abe can definitely speak. He's been doing a lot of organizing. Lisa Montgomery, the only female on federal death row who's scheduled for execution December 8th. We need to be working on that case. I picked the t-shirt out today to wear with Rodney Reed's name on it, an innocent man on Texas death row. We definitely need to give him some time. Luis Perez, Paul Story on Texas death row. The names go on and on and on. I wish as much as my comrades here on this panel could tell you that, you know, their stories are a thing of the past and this doesn't happen anymore, but it's happening today. And I've just named some of the cases. So let me stop. I know our time is running short, and entertain any questions that folks may have. Let me put on my glasses to read the chat box and we can see. I guess I'll ask people if you want to unmute yourself and have a question that you would like to share. We certainly thank you, Abe, for sharing. Maybe you'd like to share out loud for everybody, since this is going to be, it is recorded and going to be aired on Facebook, and I don't know if the chat box will be visible. So maybe we'll start with Abe, if you could share what you just put in the chat box and anything else you want to share. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much, all of you, for your inspiring testimony and witness. And Marla, I don't know if you remember meeting me, but I met you when you were freed briefly in Delaware that first time you got out. So I put the web address for witnesstoinnocence.org there, as well as deathpenaltyaction.org, where we've got petitions on the federal death penalty. Those are the only executions that are currently scheduled in the country, are not just the one that Sandra mentioned on December 8th, but also Orlando Hall on November 19th. That's a week from Thursday. And Brendan, I'm blanking on Brendan's last name, Brandon Bernard, that's it, is on December 10th, International Human Rights Day. He would be the 10th person executed in the United States under the federal death penalty since July, which is outrageous. We had our first executions, first federal execution since 2003 in July, and so far, President Trump has become the most executing president in the country, in the history of this country, since the 1950s. And he's got 3 more scheduled. There may be 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 more added before January 20th. So anyway, we've got a petition to Congress calling on Congress to get rid of the federal death penalty. There's also a petition directly to President Trump. And of course, you can go to savelisa.org to learn more about the case of Lisa Montgomery, scheduled to be executed on December 8th, and I believe it's savebrandon.org or something like that. I'll find that link and put it in there also. But also, all of this is at deathpenaltyaction.org, and you can take action to get involved. And we make sure we work with the Terror Death Penalty Resistance Network to make sure that there are protests that people can attend either virtually or if you're in the area, we're really not encouraging big crowds right now, but if people want to feel moved to be outside the prison, or on November 19th, a week from Thursday, we'll be at Black Lives Matter Plaza at the time of the execution in Washington, D.C., which is as close as we can get to the White House. And that's going to be, if the execution time is still 6 p.m., we'll start around 5 p.m. there. So anyway, there's so much people can do. Get resources at deathpenaltyaction.org. Make sure you sign up and donate at witnesstoinnocence.org. And then if you really want to go deep on any of this information, the best site is Death Penalty Info, the Death Penalty Information Center, deathpenaltyinfo.org. Not affiliated with any of us, but they just put together an amazing and in-depth report on the issue of race and the death penalty that people, I mean, it like nothing else, it really helps people understand how capital punishment is rooted in slavery and white supremacy, and all that is connected. So anyway, hope that's helpful. Thanks for giving me a moment.
Oh, I'm still unmuted. Okay, great. Thank you, Abe. Does anybody else have a comment or a question that they'd like to share for one or all of our panelists? I'm looking in the chat box and seeing some great comments. I appreciate Sandra for mentioning an organization in North Carolina called Healing Justice, bringing victims of wrongful convictions and victims of crimes together to heal. That's excellent. We need much more of that restorative justice. So thank you. And Suzanne, I appreciate you bringing our attention to a horrible incident that happened. It just happened, looking up the date, December 4th. I think the videos were released this summer in August of John Neville. And John Neville, I encourage you to Google that name, died in a prison in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. He was having a seizure, and much like George Floyd, was killed by the officers who put their knee on his neck when they were trying to subdue him, even though he was screaming out that he couldn't breathe. The video, much like George Floyd's video, is horrific to watch. And I think it's important for us to mention, because what we're seeing on the streets all too often, and most recently here in Philadelphia, where Ronnie and I are, is the case of Walter Wallace, who was killed. And again, to bring the mental health point to light that Kwame brought out, during a mental health crisis, he had a knife. The police killed him when they came to respond. We're seeing these time and time police brutality happening on the streets. Make no mistake, it's happening behind bars too. And the case of John Neville brings that home. And that was in North Carolina, in Winston-Salem. And I heard this summer in August that all of the officers involved in that were let go. I'm not sure where that case has gone since then, but I encourage people, not just in North Carolina, but nationally, to follow the case of John Neville to see where that goes. Let's see. I appreciate Abe putting some links into some websites, and thank you. I asked Suzanne if she would please post this flyer. If you'd like to see Kwame again this Sunday, he's been gracious enough to offer his time again this Sunday at noon, along with some other very prestigious names for a press conference. It's happening Monday. I thought it was supposed to be Sunday. I'm sorry, maybe it is Monday. So that's my fault if it is Monday. I thought it was Sunday, my apologies. November 16th, 12 p.m. There's going to be a press conference where Ham Africa, with the Coalition to Free Kwame Ajamu, along with Angela Davis, Colin Kaepernick will be speaking out for the first time, and then Kwame and the lawyer Ajamu, who you saw tonight, Lynn Washington Jr., an attorney from Temple University. So you don't want to miss this. It's a critical moment in the case of Kwame Ajamu. We would definitely want to tune in. So I will make sure that we have the right date and the right time for that. Yes, I hope that I'm right with that date. I'll make sure about that, and we will make sure that you know. We'll have Suzanne and others with Ashe County Library will have that, and we'll be watching and posting it on our websites as well. So thank you for sharing that. Anyone else?
Actually,
Go ahead, Suzanne.
I'm sorry.
No, please.
I'm getting an echo here. I was actually trying to share something about it coming up Monday night on November 16th. And I don't know if that was showing on the screen while you were talking there. I was trying to pull up the cover of Jim Grimsley's book. And it's entitled How I Shed My Skin and Unlearned the Racist Lessons of a Southern Childhood. He's an author from New Bern, North Carolina, and he'll be joining us with our program series, Race in Life and Literature. That's, continuing on the conversation that we start here today, which I really appreciate all of you for being here, and these powerful stories that really make an impact in opening our eyes and understanding a little more about what's going on. And thank you again. I hope I didn't mess you up on the screen share.
You're doing great. You're doing great. I also want to open up to any of our three panelists. If there's something that as your comrades are speaking, maybe something else came to mind that you wanted to add to your story, or you wanted to have us consider and think about with regard to the death penalty and racism. So if there's anything else you would like to add, please feel free.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off what Marlow has said when he said he had witnessed guys that he had been walked to the execution. Mm-hmm. And I had witnessed seven executions. I had witnessed with 6 other guys that I actually knew. I used to play cards with. We went to the rec. I played ball with, played chess with. And when they got their date set, the guards, the captain, I let them walk to our cells to say their goodbyes to those guys that he knew they was friendly with, had some type of bond with. And I think 5 of them, when they come to knock at my cell, I used to have my mirror hanging out. My heart, I could hear my heart beating through my ears. Trying to catch your breath because this guy who you just seen the day before is being walked out this place at 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. You ain't finna see him no more. So they'll come to the cell to say their goodbyes. And when they get close to me, I used to close my curtains, jump in my bunk, lay at the other end of the bed, and put the pillow over my head like I'm knocked out. And they ask me, why you do that? And my answer to them is, what do I have to offer that brother when I know he's being walked to his death? It's not like when I see somebody I know that goes outside and I tell him I love him, or I see later that something happened to him. It's not like that. It's a whole different type of feeling when you know where this guy's going. His date was set, and he's going to be murdered, right? So there's nothing I could actually ever tell a person that when I know he's been walked to his death, hey, I'm gonna see you later, man. I see when I see. You can't. There's nothing I can give him or give myself to make him feel better or to make me feel like, hey, I'm gonna see this guy, because I'm not. So when I heard him say that, it's like me living through him, he living through me, because we have witnessed the same thing. And when Governor Ryan did his first and last execution was on Cocoleras. I was just on the yard playing ball with this guy the day before, when he was on the yard bragging about that he had got a stealth execution. And they come right around that very same day at 4:30 in the morning, banging on that man's door and tell the man, it's time to ride. So that right there changed the mindset of Governor Ryan when he stood up and said, something is wrong when 13 guys have been freed and 12 guys have been killed. So something is wrong with figures. And he commuted everybody's sentence to natural life. And then he let people, he actually exonerated 4 pardoned 4 or 5 guys, and it's hard. It's hard to think about that stuff because that's a part of you, and when you think about it, it takes a lot for you not to break down because, like Marlow said, he said he was out 10 months, and they came and they told him he got to walk back to that place. I can't imagine. I can't even imagine that. But these are the nights that I still have, that I'm still living in this unreal dream that I've been out 11 years, and I'm still thinking somebody's gonna come knocking at my door right now and tell me that my innocent petition has been void, and I got to go back to the prison. And this is an ongoing dream that I constantly have, and it's still surreal. Like I said, it's been 11 years now, and it still haunts me. You know, you still hear the sounds, you still hear all the chattering, and from the guys talking, and I think the only way that I do get through it is through my family and constantly staying busy. You know, I get up at 6. I work from 6:30 in the morning, so I literally fall out to 2 o'clock in the morning. And I have to stay busy, because if I don't stay busy, I feel like I'm gonna lose something somewhere along the line.
And Ronnie, does it also feel like you have a lot of time to make up for, because you had so much time stolen from you?
Well, you know, they stole 21 years from me, and I can't call my grandmother, I can't call my mother, I can't call my brother, I can't call my nephew, I can't call my stepfather, I can't call my my baby boys no more. I can't call my baby daughter no more. Those are years that were snatched from me, and I can't get that back. So no matter how much time you think I got to make up for this, you can't. That's dead time. You're not gonna never get that back. So and you can't try to get that back. So my thing is, like I was just telling my crew in Chicago, whatever happened in 2020, it stays in 2020. We're gonna move on to 2021. So my past is me, but my past ain't gonna determine. It's not gonna deter how I move about the 2021 or the 2010, 2011. It's not gonna do that. I got through those years by the grace of God, by good people in my corner, studying that law, studying that Quran, studying that Bible. I got through that with work. You know, I didn't have an idle mind. I didn't have, my footsteps wasn't heavy, because to me, I think he was carrying me the whole time, because he shielded me from a whole lot of stuff. And before I came home, he made sure a whole lot of stuff was out of my way to make sure that I succeed when I got out here. And that's my move now. My move, what they say, make feet hit the floor. I say, thank you, guys. So after that is the move I'm gonna make, because I'm about trying to get forward. I'm not trying to step backwards.
Thank you. Thank you. Ronnie, you anticipated a common question that I've seen people ask at these events, which is, how do you get through your days after having survived such a horrific experience? And so thank you for sharing that. I know it hasn't been easy, and it continues to be a daily struggle. I'm really grateful for your family and friends, that they're there for you, because I know that you've been through a lot. And same, I would say, for Marlow and for Kwame as well. Without those people in your lives, I'm sure it would be extremely difficult. We've lost a lot of guys, particularly in recent years. And I know you knew Harold Wilson here in Philadelphia, as did Kwame, among others that are too many to name. Suzanne, I know that we're running up on time. It's 7 o'clock. Can we go on a few more minutes? I wanted to see if anybody else
Can
among
I
the
comment
panel.
on the psychological effects of
Yeah, I was going to see if the other panelists wanted to say anything before we close. So is that all right, Suzanne, if we could go a little bit longer?
Sure.
Excellent. Okay, so I definitely wanted to give Marlow and Kwame an opportunity to share some closing words. So Marlow, please feel free. And you might need to mute yourself, Ronnie. I think there might be an echo. And then before we close, I just want to share a couple of quick stats about North Carolina and its death penalty. But thank you so much for sharing that, Ronnie. Marlow, you want to add? Did we lose you, Marlow? There you are. No, I see.
I don't know that he can hear you.
Sandy,
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear us? Go ahead, Marlow.
Suzanne, Sandy?
Yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Can I say
Oh,
something?
Yeah,
he might be
please.
freezing.
Can I say something?
Yes, Marlow, please go on.
Yeah, system is freezing right now.
I think his stream is slowing down.
Yeah, I don't know if it's weather. We can't see you. We heard you for a minute, Marlow. Maybe while we're waiting for your stream to get caught up, we'll give Kwame a few minutes to close, make any closing comments he would like to share.
So as always, guys, I just appreciate being able to have a few moments to bring awareness to both death penalty abolitionists and, like I said, the strong need for people to pay more attention to the mental health issues in our society, especially,
Can I say
people of
something?
color.
Yeah,
Marlo,
Marlow, we'll let Kwame
you can.
finish up and then we're going to turn it to you, okay? Is that all right, Marlow?
Can I say something?
Yeah, Marlow.
He's freezing. Let him go.
All right, go ahead, Marlow. Can you hear us?
Can I say something?
Yes. Can you hear us? Go ahead. I don't think he can hear us.
Say,
Can you hear us, Marlow?
I think he had a delayed response and his video is stuck.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Like
sorry,
a loop
Kwame.
or something.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to point out those two issues is very important to me, always to mention, aside from what we're doing, in this movement, that we take a few moments out for ourselves and our family and loved ones and friends and have that mental health observation. Very important. Somebody needs to talk to them, give them a talk, I also want to say that with respect to what both Ronnie and Marla were speaking at, my friend Derek Jameson as well, when they talk about how, they know these guys and played cards with them and, and wrote letters and then watched them go off to their execution dates. I'm just so very fortunate that with all of the happenstance and it was very wrong and ill for me as from 17 to 45 years of age to have been suffered. That was not an occurrence of my time on death row. And I'm just so glad that, I don't know how it would feel, if my friend and a few of those men I didn't know, personally, some from the neighborhood, like J.D. Scott, for instance. I knew him from the streets and he was executed. I just don't know that if I could have been, in the cell and he walked by, I came back, like Ronnie was saying, to say goodbye, what that would have done to me. And so I'm just so glad that that never happened to me. I have a problem with people dying on me anyway. So, that probably would have told me up really bad.
I can't.
That's
Your
all.
screen frozen.
Yeah, he's froze.
Your screen is frozen.
Oh, okay. But we can hear you. Can you hear us? Well, at least
No, I think he's,
tech issues are
I
at the
think he's,
end.
yeah.
Go ahead, Kwame.
No, I was just going to say that this is where my appreciation lies tonight. And I'm just so glad to have been a part of this. I thank you, Suzanne, for having me. And I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that,
Thank you
sure
for
that
being
through
here.
oh, without a doubt. I'm sure that you'll be able to get back in touch with me through your sister.
I look forward to hearing you on Sunday, Monday,
Absolutely.
Monday.
16th. Hello.
Yeah, I'm sorry I had the wrong day. It was initially Sunday and I guess it got changed to Monday. So, so
Hey,
yeah,
Sandy.
I see, hey, LaShawn, I'm so happy to see you.
Zoom bombing.
You guys look like twins. Oh my God.
I know, right? We do look a lot alike. This is the wind
can't see
beneath
myself
Kwame's
anymore.
wings, who's been there for many, many years and has her own story to share as a murder victim family member and has been very vocal with Ohioans Against State Executions and played an integral role herself. So she's quite the activist, in addition to, in her own right, in addition to being there for Kwame for many, many years. And I can't thank you enough, LaShawn, for all that you do.
I
So,
love you guys.
right back
Keep up
at
the
you.
fight.
Yes, yes, love it too, so, so much. Thank you I'm so glad you came into the screen so I could tell you that. And Ronnie's got remarkable family as well behind him this whole time that's been helping him. I've had the pleasure to meet and his wonderful wife and children. So thank you for that. And Marlow's family I've been knowing for many, many years. And it's just so happy. I cried tears, so many tears when I saw his mother, Dolores, light up the day that he came home. And so it's just, and his sons, who coincidentally, Kwame, one of Marlow's sons is named Kwame. So, yeah, it's a great name, right, Marlow? I don't know if you can hear us at least. So before we wrap up, and hopefully Marlow, if any point you can come in, can you hear us? He's still trying. Marlow, if you can, please feel free to interrupt me. And in the meantime, I just wanted to point the attention to folks to a couple of links I put in the chat box. Abe had referred to the Death Penalty Information Center out of DC as a wonderful resource. Their website is deathpenaltyinfo.org. And if you go to deathpenalty.org, there's a couple of links here that will take you to what we need to mention before we close is some things that are remarkable to the state of North Carolina, since this event is being hosted out of North Carolina. North Carolina is one of 28 states that does still have the death penalty, and they have had their own exonerations. In fact, 10 people have been released from death row in North Carolina as innocent people. There are still 145 people on death row in North Carolina, 3 of whom are women. There have been 10 exonerees and 5 clemencies from North Carolina's death row. So it is still an issue in North Carolina. You can go to one of the links to show, to read the stories about the exonerations in the state of North Carolina. And the second link brings your attention to a report that was just released a month ago in early October by the Capital Center, let's see.
Racist Roots.
Yeah, the name of the report is Racist Roots. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong link right now. I don't know which one I put in the chat box. Hopefully I put the right one. Yes, here it is. Racist Roots. It's a project exposing the racism endemic in North Carolina's death penalty. And it was gathered and reported by Durham, by a defense organization out of Durham called the Center for Death Penalty Litigation, CDPL. So I encourage you to go to that link, and I hope I copied the right link. If not, certainly go.
We'll add it to the thread in our Facebook page.
Yes, yes, and I'll add it as well because I'm looking at it in the chat box if at all possible, but for people to at least click on and save on their computer. But yeah, this report shares through essays and academic articles containing in-depth analyses, photographs, archival news clippings, poetry, stirring personal narratives, 400 years of the state's use of capital punishment have been examined, and it's building an argument about the history of slavery to Jim Crow and mass incarceration and death penalty executions and that have followed. So there's a lot of tireless advocates and the movement against the death penalty out of North Carolina, including Henderson Hill and many others. I don't have the link handy, but I will certainly find it if people are not able to find it. And maybe some of my friends here on the panel have heard some of the amazing voices of death row inmates in North Carolina who have a podcast. Someone's been helping them get their voices out, sharing their poetry and their stories. So I'm in awe of the activists in North Carolina who I don't know personally, but hope to meet in the future. So we can join together with those who are working in North Carolina as well. Certainly this report reveals how much it's needed. So I just, before I close, I want to thank my dear friends, my dear sister, Ashe County Library, for all of the efforts that went into this program. I know that it wasn't intended by an abundance of people. However, it will be seen by many, many people to come because it's recorded, and we're going to be airing that and putting it on Facebook and lots of other places. You've been given an abundance of information of ways you can continue this fight, this struggle. I do want to add that I admire Ronnie, Marlow, Kwame, not only for the strength and the inspiration that they've showed over all of the years that they fought for their freedom and have continued to fight for all of the people they left behind, but also their tireless work, not only to get the wrongfully convicted out of prison, but also to get rid of the death penalty for the guilty as well. So I admire them for that. We believe, all of us, the death penalty shouldn't be an institution for anyone, regardless of guilt or innocence. Their stories of innocence are remarkable, but let's make no mistake that we're unapologetically saying that we're against the death penalty for everyone, including those who are guilty, for all of the reasons that we mentioned and many others that we didn't have time, with all the flaws of the death penalty and the inhumanity that it brings to us as a nation. We need to get on board with the rest of the quote unquote civilized world and abolish the death penalty finally. Europeans look at us and ask, and we need to get on board. So, all right, I will stop talking because there's plenty more that I could say as well. I know we're over time. Thank you for letting us run over a little bit, Suzanne. If there's anything you want to share before we close out on behalf of Ashe County Library, please, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you again. Thank you, all of you, so much. And good hearing those stories. As I said, there's more talking about race and literature programming in the future days and weeks ahead. I put some links to the events and books that we'll be discussing. So when you log on and see the thread there, we'll also be posting these things on our Facebook page. So keep fighting, keep the fight going, and sharing the good words. Prayers to all.
Thank you so much. So if my three friends could hold on for just a moment after we close, just to have some final wrap up. Thank you to the audience members for coming, and thank you for all that you've done and will continue to do in the struggle. Thank you so much. I'll let you stop the recording.